lot of things are buzzing around the internet right now with reports coming out from Steelers beat writers and, of course, the fans that they still have confidence that they will be trading for a 49ers wide receiver, Deebo Samuel or Brandon Aiyuk. They just won't let it go. I had to jump on here. Two things I want to talk about. The first being why the Steelers and 49ers keep being linked, and more importantly, discuss why their logic is flawed, because it is. So with that being said, let's get into it, y'all. Yo, what's up, everybody? It's your boy, Ryan Tigey, back in action. Reports are flying around the internet, specifically coming out of the Pittsburgh Steelers camp, where you have Pittsburgh beat writer Ray, don't know how to say his last name, recently had an interview and published an article talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers still feeling confident that they're going to be trading for a wide receiver. And in that conversation, he specifically called out, once again, like they did leading up to the draft, the San Francisco 49ers, either being Brandon Aiyuk or Deebo Samuel. Well, as I've discussed in many other videos, and why I think it's really just nonsense and people just kind of pulling shit out of thin air, regardless if it's a beat writer or not with insider information, I'll tell you why I don't think this is going to happen whatsoever. And the first quote Ray mentioned that I picked up on is asking about if there's any potential hopes that the Steelers are still going to be able to make a move now that we're outside the draft. The season's quickly approaching with less than 3 months now coming up. And his response was, I do think so. Yes, they will have a number 2 receiver on their roster in September who's not currently on their roster right now. And then, of course, naturally with that, people have picked up and run with that. But it gets better. He continues on to say, I think it's Aiyuk or Samuel. Given what the 49ers have done, drafting Ricky Pearsall in the first round, signing Juwan Jennings, I think there's another shoe to drop out there in San Francisco. They have too many good receivers, and they're not going to be able to pay them all. Okay, I'm going to stop right there. Those were the 2 quotes that came out with this beat writer Ray from the Steelers, specifically targeting, once again, the San Francisco 49ers, and more specifically, Brandon Aiyuk, and now Deebo Samuel has been in that mix ever since we were leading up to the draft. Just from the most logical standpoint, what are the 49ers going to get in return? What, future draft picks? How does that help them right now in this current moment? People outside of the 49ers organizations and fan base yet to really understand how badly Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch want to win a Super Bowl, especially when you take in all the factors of getting so close the past couple of seasons, almost getting the job done, but obviously not finishing it off and actually capturing a ring. But here's where the logic just becomes idiotic. They're not going to be able to pay them all. That's not true. Definitely not for this season. One thing, of course, the beat writer Ray doesn't mention is talking about how Brock Purdy's going into his last year of his rookie deal. Okay, that is extremely important because they pay a quarterback less than $1 million for this upcoming season, who's an all-pro, Pro Bowl quarterback. And what else just happened? Well, post June 1, the San Francisco 49ers just got additional cap space. How? They designated it when Eric Armstead left the team. That freed up a massive chunk of cap space, and it was designated post June 1 because it would allow them to now maneuver and get flush with cash so they can make moves and, I don't know, sign players. Deebo Samuel, already under contract. Ricky Pearsall, just drafted on a rookie deal. Juwan Jennings, just signed a contract. The only person that's not on a contract is Brandon Aiyuk. And what do you think the 49ers are going to be doing as they get questions about it leading up to the draft, after the draft? What's going on with the Brandon Aiyuk situation? As I've shown clips in my other videos, John Lynch has addressed this himself directly, and I quote, he said, we're past this now.
Drafts and off seasons, do conversations happen? Absolutely they do. We're past that now.
When he says something like that, I believe it. And so, again, when you just go and look back at the returns of what the 49ers would get for Brandon Aiyuk or Deebo Samuel, it doesn't make any fucking sense. How is it going to help them this year, leading into this year? That is coming up very fast. And so this whole myth of not being able to pay is just literally not true. It's not true. When they signed Brandon Aiyuk to a deal, and as John has answered questions of that talks are going very productive, they're continuing to work on a deal. They want Brandon Aiyuk to be on the team for a long time moving forward. Well, what do you think is going to help that? Probably some extra cap space. And then, of course, they could even lower his cap number this year versus what he's set to make right now, $14 million against the cap on the last year of his 5th-year option. Well, the 49ers are in a very comfortable place, actually, because they can sign Brandon Aiyuk push out his money like they do with all these big contracts. So this whole, they're not going to be able to pay all these wide receivers, it's not true. And it's definitely not true when we talk about this upcoming season. And Brock Purdy is a big part of that. As we all know, following this upcoming season, yes, there is going to be some changes. Depending on how the season goes and what happens, that will dictate definitely a good amount of it. But the reality is they have all the money right now, today, to have all those players signed, who they are already all signed. The only one who's looking for a new deal is Brandon Aiyuk. John Lynch, best friends with Brandon Ayuk's agent. So again, I don't know what it is with the Pittsburgh Steelers specifically targeting the 49ers. Do I think the GM of the Steelers, Khan, and Mike Tomlin had conversations about a potential trade, specifically Brandon Aiyuk, leading up to the draft? Absolutely. They do that with hundreds of players, but it didn't happen. And when you talk about getting something in return that will help them this year, it doesn't exist. And another thing that's just, it kind of made me chuckle as I was reading it. Ray started off his quote with saying, I believe there's a number 2 wide receiver that the Steelers are going to be able to pick up that's not on the team now. Okay, Brandon Aiyuk and Deebo Samuel are both better than Pickens. That's who he's referring to as the Steelers' number 1 wide receiver, and so they're going to get a number 2. You really think Brandon Aiyuk or Deebo Samuel would be second fiddle to Pickens? I don't think so. I don't think so at all. Just look at the production, regardless of Deebo being a hybrid guy, because I'm sure that's what some people will say about his receiving numbers versus Pickens and et cetera. But just overall numbers and production, Deebo Samuel is of more value than Pickens. I don't even think that's really that debatable. The only thing that just I think makes sense, which is almost a lazy approach, is yeah, the 49ers team is fucking stacked. Yeah, the 49ers, they got weapons all over the field on both sides of the ball. But just because they have a plethora of players that they drafted in the wide receiver room, built up, and now have tremendous value on the field, that's just not how it works. Just because we have a multitude of players at a single position, Juwan Jennings signed for a relatively small contract. It's not one of those massive contracts when you hear Brandon Ayuk's looking for Amon-Ra St. Brown money, which is 20 plus million per year. So the Juwan Jennings signing, yes, he is so valuable to the team, and I was fired up when they got him signed. But the reality is that's not that big of a contract relative to what like a Brandon Aiyuk is looking for. So the no money is not a factor, definitely not this year, especially when you look at the immediate returns that the 49ers wouldn't be getting to let Deebo or Brandon Aiyuk go. And again, I know I've seen a lot of 49ers fans that seem to not appreciate who Deebo is and what Deebo's done. People forget Deebo's a fucking dog. And yes, I know Deebo Samuel is injury prone. I've talked about it. Everybody knows it. But people just, they forget about 1, what he does with the ball in his hands. 2, what he means to the team. Last year, first year as a captain, that means something. The team looks at him as a leader. Not only to mention who walks out first in the tunnel with the boombox alongside Trent Williams, Deebo Samuel, who oftentimes gets credited for setting the tone on the offensive side of the ball that players and coaches talk about, Deebo Samuel. So people are devaluing Deebo, and I don't know why, only maybe just due to the simple fact of injuries, but Deebo means way more to this team than what people are giving him credit for. Shit, the past couple years when Deebo's been going absolutely apeshit, taking a wide receiver screen 70 yards to the house.
First and 10 Niners in the Philly 48. Purdy looks left, now middle, throws, caught. Broken tackle by Deebo Samuel. Went for the first down. 30, 20, 15, 10, 5, touchdown! San Francisco!
People just, I don't know how, but they do. They seem to forget it. And the 49ers are not even remotely close to being in a better position. They're actually, in fact, in a much worse position if they were to trade Deebo Samuel, who I believe, if anything did happen and were to happen from here into the future, like next year, it'd most likely be Deebo Samuel over Brandon Aiyuk. But yet again, I wholeheartedly believe nothing is going to happen leading up to this season, especially when you think about how close the 49ers have gotten to winning a Super Bowl, have come up short. This is, again, their last year on a rookie deal with quarterback Brock Purdy, who they're going to have to pay, and they are going to have to give an absolute bag to. It would not make sense to do anything with those players right now in this moment leading up to this season, especially they have all the financial means to do so. So, again, a lot of shit I'm seeing online spurred up again. It's all over the feeds everywhere I look. Steelers reporters, Steelers fans talking about there's still hope, and they feel confident that they're going to be able to get one of the 49ers wide receivers, one of our studs, onto their team to then become a number 2 in Pittsburgh. But yet when you take a look at why they feel confident in that, because they can't pay them all. Yeah, we can. And I get it. The 49ers, they are absolutely loaded. But that doesn't mean Kyle Shanahan or John Lynch want to break that up. Don't forget, John Lynch played in the NFL a long time. He knows what individual players mean outside of just singularly focusing on production. He understands it. Tone setter, leader, captain, that kind of shit matters. And maybe other GMs don't take that into account all the time, but John Lynch does. Why? Because he played, and he's a Hall of Famer, so he understands. He gets it. He was one of those guys. All right, y'all, I just had to jump on here. It's not always true. When there's smoke, there's fire. I don't fucking buy it. I ain't buying this. Again, you got to remember, who is it coming from? It's coming from a Steelers beat writer. Who are his fucking sources? Do we know this guy? And even if he does have sources, what happened leading up to the draft? Because a lot of Steelers people were saying, a trade is happening for Brandon Aiyuk ahead of the draft. It's going to happen. You saw all the confidence. Everyone was talking like this is a done deal. But wait, it didn't happen. So don't buy into it. As things start to pick up and as we get closer and closer to training camp, I will be back. But until then, like, comment, subscribe. You know the deal. Hit me up. Peace.